You're listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. This is the podcast where I talk to successful women in entertainment and hear their stories. For this episode, I got to speak with Ashley Shelton. Ashley got her start starring in the critically acclaimed film Something, Anything. She was also featured on 2015 IndieWire's year-end critics poll Best Lead Actress list. Ashley is a graduate in theater from the University of Tennessee and is passionate about telling stories from the heart. Her goals include bringing to life stories that give light to social issues and connecting with people through cinema. In 2018, her writing and directorial debut came to life with Magnolia and Clementine, and that was featured in Amazon Prime's first ever film festival. We spoke remotely before social distancing was the new normal. You can find us at theother50%.com for added features, photos, show notes, and the merchandise. You can also listen on Apple Podcasts and all the podcast places. Okay, here's my conversation with Ashley Shelton. Have a listen. What do you do?
I am an actress and a filmmaker.
Okay, so I was just looking at your IMDb, and you have about 1 million credits on there. It looks like you're doing great.
I'm trying. I'm working my way to 1 million credits.
We're going for 1 million. That's the number.
Yeah.
And I know you just did a film called Magnolia and Clementine, which is on Amazon Prime. Tell us about that.
Yes. So I wrote and directed and acted in the film Magnolia and Clementine, and it was my first thing that I ever wrote, like 4 years ago. And it kind of took on different versions, kind of sitting on my computer, and then it was featured in Amazon Prime's first ever film festival they did this past year. So that was very exciting for me. And it also was the best possible way to get a short film kind of out in the world. So I was very excited about that.
Let's talk about the process of making that film. And then I want to go all the way back to the beginning of how you even got into this business.
Okay.
First of all, tell us what it's about.
So it's about a writer, and she gets her story stolen by her husband, who is also a writer. So it explores the kind of relationship that people are in when they're both creatives, you know, the little tug of war you kind of have, which parallels to my real life because my husband's also an actor. And so she gets her story stolen, and she starts to see her characters kind of around in real life. And then she kind of realizes she's been standing in her own way this whole time and needs to stop that. So it explores the just creative process, I think, that a lot of people go through, and a lot of things that people that aren't creatives go through with just kind of standing in their own way. A woman kind of, I don't know, trusting herself and her talent, and trusting that she's good enough, even though she's not as successful as she wants to be, knowing that that will eventually happen for her, but she just has to get out of her own way first.
God, that's a very universal theme, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and it struck me. I started watching the film, and it's her husband that steals the story.
Yeah,
that's just not cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of my little node to the patriarchy and kind of feeling. Most of the creatives I'm surrounded with in my life are men, and while they're very supportive of me, I sometimes feel like it's hard. It's just hard to be a woman and kind of and even now the industry I feel is very male dominated. That's changing. That's definitely changing. But so yeah, it was kind of like, well, she had a story and then a man took it and he was successful with it. And doesn't that kind of sometimes happen?
Isn't that metaphorical?
Yeah, because then also as women, we're not taught to be as confident as men. And I read something that was like, I try to act and answer things as if the version of me as a man, like my exact age and everything. If I was a man, how would I do this? And I kind of think about that often because we aren't taught to kind of go out there and be ball busters, shall I say, to kind of get what we want. And this year I'm trying to take on that kind of mentality of having more confidence in my work and more confidence in general, and more just trusting myself and being who I am and being confident in myself and who God made me to be, because we're all totally capable. All us queens are totally capable.
Yes. I love it. Like, this is a theme I'm hearing more and more in my life. And I know when my girlfriends and I are talking about things like work or negotiating or whatever, there's always someone in the circle who says, stop. Would a man ask that question? Or
Yeah.
how would a man approach this negotiation? We have to do it all the time.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if it's our instinct or our conditioning that has us pull back. But yeah, I think we all have to make that effort.
Yeah, and I think it can be both. I think honestly, I think we think more than men, and that's not putting men down. I love men; they're great. We need them. But I mean, I need them. But I think we think more about things, and we tend to overthink, and we approach things from emotional standpoints sometimes. And I just think we're not taught to be as confident as men are, and that sucks. So you kind of have to find that for yourself and go out there and be the queen that you are.
That's right. Well, it's funny. What I thought of as you were saying that is, we're thinking about what we want and how to get it, and also, and how to have them still like me
Yes.
as I'm asking for what I want.
Yes, isn't that always kind of the thing in the back of your head that you don't want to offend anyone? And I think women especially are like that. Like, we don't want to ruffle any feathers. We want people to like us because that's just, I mean, that's what we've been kind of taught how to be, I think, our whole lives. And you kind of have to forget that, especially in this industry, because not everyone's going to like you. What the stories you make or want to tell is not going to be everyone's cup of tea. I have to constantly remind myself that it's an art form, so it's subjective, and we all like different things, and we all need everyone else's stories to see the world through different viewpoints, through different eyes. I mean, that's the beauty of filmmaking. It's the beauty of art. So,
Well, it seems like that's the whole point.
yeah, I mean, yeah, you would think that would be, but I think that sometimes gets lost in filmmaking, especially. People kind of, I don't know. I think film and music are two things that people are so harsh about. When I'm like, it's a art, you have to, at the end of the day, it's art. I may not like the type of music you like, but that doesn't mean I should put it down because you like it.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's something to think about too.
That's something to aspire to.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about how you got in the business in the first place. Your first love is acting.
Yes.
And how did you know that?
Gosh, I don't know. I just did. I growing up, I was a really weird kid, and I'm super introverted as an adult too, so I'm still pretty weird. So movies were just kind of like my best friends. I mean, I would watch movies, and that's how I would experience the world. That's how I learned about emotions and love and heartbreak and travel. And so I think I identified with just movies, and I identified with the feelings that they made me feel. And I think I always wanted to do that for other people because that's how I best communicated myself, was through that and through acting. I'm not a good communicator and just being a person out in the real world, but if it's acting or if it's filmmaking, I'm superb in communicating my emotions that way. So I think in a way it's therapeutic for me to be able to do that, and I think I realized that early on as a child.
What was the first kind of acting that you did?
The first acting that I did was probably, I mean, I did little plays and things growing up, but the first first acting that I did, I remember when we got our first like camera recorder, like
VHS?
VHS, like where you recorded the camera. And I would ask my dad to constantly just tape me doing everything. I would just say, can you just tape me just standing here or dancing? Or so that was probably the first acting that I ever did. But my mom says that when I was a baby, she would tell me to reenact parts of like a story. So she would say, be the scary part, or do the scary part, or do the funny part. And I would do what she was telling me. So little did she know she was breeding me to be an actor when I was as a baby.
Your earliest coaching.
Yes, my earliest coach was my mother.
That's great. So were you doing shows in high school?
Yeah, I did shows in high school. Funny enough, I was not chosen to be in the acting class in high school. You had to audition for it, and I did not get chosen to be in the acting class in high school, which I'm still a little bitter about. But now I'm like, well, it's a cool story because Michael Jordan didn't make his high school team either, so it's fine.
You got back to that acting teacher, like now.
But And then when I went to college, I majored in theater and my degree is in theater. So that's when I really found my grounding.
Where did you go?
I went to University of Tennessee in Knoxville. They had the Clarence Brown Theater there, which it was great because they have a professionally ran theater out of the school. And so I got to be a part of that, and I got my foundation in theater, which I'm very happy to have that, because I think that was a basis of showing me how to tell stories. Great storytelling. Yeah.
And then how did you get into professional work after that?
Well, I knew I always wanted to do film. I always wanted to be in movies. And after theater, I moved to New York. And I was auditioning for theater and auditioning for plays. And I quickly realized in this day and age, you don't really do theater unless you're a movie star. You go back and do theater. So I just found an agent and then started auditioning for things. My first film was with someone actually from Knoxville, which is oddly enough. It was his first film too, so we kind of had the cool first time film experience together. And
was that in New York or in Tennessee?
I was living in New York when they found me. They actually they found me. I don't remember how they found me, but I didn't pop up on my agency's website for some reason, and then they found me and messaged me on Facebook. And the weekend that they messaged me, I was actually back in town at home for New Year's or something. And I went and auditioned and I got the part. And yeah, so I hate to say that it kind of fell in my lap, but I don't know. I have been wanting to do it my whole life. So I felt like I kind of put out a call for that to kind of find me.
Oh.
And so I did that. It's called Something Anything, and it was my first film. I had done a couple episodes of TV before I had done that, but
your first agent in New York, was that a commercial agent or did you get a legit agent right away?
No, they weren't actually a New York agency. They were a Southern based agency, and she's still the same agent I have now. But they found me. They didn't even find me through them. They kind of found me. I guess I was just meant to play the part. That's kind of how I feel about stories. I feel like they always, most of the time, find the right people to tell them. And especially for me, that's kind of a mantra I have for myself is the right stories will find me. Like the stories I'm supposed to tell will always find me. And they have.
Okay, that is the right attitude.
Yeah.
That probably keeps you from going crazy.
Yeah, a little bit because you have very little control over anything really in this industry. And especially being an actor, you have not really any control. So
terrible.
Yeah.
So how are you really able to keep your head about it with auditioning for things and looking at projects? I mean, you sound very zen about the whole thing. Is that reality?
I mean, yes and no. Some days I'm very that way, but when push comes to shove, and you can go a little crazy. But I think that's what's driven me to make my own projects as well. Also, kind of lack of the real meaty roles that I want to play and characters I want to portray too has kind of pushed me into my own avenue of doing my own work, which I always enjoyed writing growing up. But it's really cool that I've written something and it's kind of come into fruition, and it's given me confidence to do that more.
Yeah. So let's talk about that journey. I mean, I hate that word. But let's talk about that journey. So talk about, you wrote this script, and then how did you go about, getting all the pieces together to go ahead and film it?
So I wrote it, like I said, I was inspired by Frances Ha, Greta Gerwig's, the movie she's in. I love that movie. And I believe it's Noah's film as well. He directed it. And I remember watching that movie and just thinking, I should write. I should start writing my own movies, or just at least writing down characters I would like to play, or stories kind of that I would like to tell. And so I was really frustrated at the time of my life, auditioning wise, life wise. And so I kind of filtered it through the eyes of a writer who was just kind of down on her luck and wasn't having anything successful going on. And then she was married to the complete polar opposite of her, someone who was successful and having all these things happen, which was kind of true in my real life. And so I wrote something, and it was completely different. It was based more on kind of the mental health struggle that comes along with that, and also just my own personal struggles with mental health and anxiety and things like that. And it sat on my computer for a long time. And then we had a friend move back to Tennessee from New York, and he was like, we should all make something. And I agreed. And I said I had the script. And then the Paul Harrell, who was the director of the first film I was in, he also teaches film, and he wanted to get involved and get his students involved to crew the film, which was awesome. And so we trimmed it down, and I had a solid script, and we just made it. We made it for no money.
That was going to be my next question. Did you raise money for it?
No, I didn't have any money for it. We just we did it we filmed it in 3 days, and I was able to have a full crew, which was awesome because they were students of Paul's, and they were the most helpful crew and people. And then I did have money. I got money for post production through some people that wanted to be involved with me and help me. So that helped a lot because then I learned a movie is really made in post. So yeah, it all just, I think it was, I mean, honestly, it sounds cheesy, but I remember praying one day and I remember saying, hey, God, if you want this movie to happen, then make it happen. And the ball started rolling, and it just was a movie that was supposed to be out there. And so it all kind of happened. Now, not to say it was like easy. I spent like almost a whole year kind of finding the right people to help me edit it and color and do all the things, because I am a control freak, which is really great for a director, but not really great for an actor. But it helped me in the directing and post-production side, because I just was trying to be a perfectionist about it, but that doesn't really serve you well in an artistic endeavor, being a perfectionist. So I learned a lot about that as well, and the whole process. So yeah, and it went to some great film festivals, and then it wound up in Amazon's film festival, which is great, and it's still on Amazon now. So
let's talk about that process. Like, how did you just submit it to a bunch of festivals, and did you travel around? How was that whole circuit?
So I learned a lot being on this side of the film. Yeah, I learned a lot about festival submissions and all the kind of politics and things that go into that. But I submitted it to, what felt like a million festivals. And I kind of discovered it's not really a festival kind of short. Like festivals, it got into some great festivals, which I really loved. The George Lindsay Festival, which in Alabama, which a lot of people don't talk about. It's a really great festival, and they're very kind and just accommodating and sweet to filmmakers. I submitted to a bunch, and it got into, I think, like over 20 probably. And
Wow.
then the Amazon thing came about, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to submit it to this. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's free and why not? So I did, and yeah, it worked out, I guess.
So then did you end up selling it to Amazon?
So I learned a lot about how Amazon works too.
Yeah, tell us.
Yeah. So it worked as just you being a self-distributor, as far as you can self-distribute to the Amazon, and I think they just take 50% of the royalties and give you the other 50, and you can put it to Prime, or you can put it for people to purchase your movie, but for the purpose of the film festival, of course, it had to be Prime, so no one had to pay to see it. But yeah, it's really simple. Amazon's really great to work with, and I think it's really great if you want to self-distribute your film to look into Amazon for sure, because it's pretty easy, and the 50% of what you make goes directly back to you.
Now, has doing this film led to other things for you?
Yeah, it's definitely led. The one thing I think it's really led to is people looking at me differently, as opposed to, I think a lot of times there's a stigma with kind of actors, especially within kind of the film world. It's just kind of like, oh, they're an actor, and they're just like messaging me because they want a part, or, it's just kind of, actors are looked at a certain way. And so I feel like doing this kind of put me into a different category of an actor and a filmmaker. And I hate to say this, but I feel like it gave me kind of more, I don't know, clout to be able to talk to people, because I've experienced their side of it a little bit.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's the one thing it's given me, which is experience, to be able to relate to directors and producers and people of that nature and talk to them from a place of understanding more than just being an actor.
Yeah, it must give you a whole different perspective on the whole process.
Yeah, it's given me a totally different perspective, and also way more respect. I already had respect, like mad respect for filmmakers, because it's not easy to, you're essentially birthing a baby and then just putting it out into the world, hoping people accept it. And that's not easy, especially if it's something deeply personal to you. So yeah. I found whole new respect for people who are filmmakers and make films and put them out. And I just, yeah.
Has it changed how you show up on set as an actor?
Absolutely, because now I think I've always thought as a director, I just didn't know it. I didn't know growing up that I just think of everything in movies. So I'm at the grocery store and it's a movie scene to me. I know how people kind of see colors when they hear music. I have the thing where I just see movies constantly. And so I've always thought that way, but now now I realize that. So yeah, when I show up to set, I'm thinking more about everything else that goes into it, and also being a lot more understanding too, to the whole crew making something happen.
And what is your process as an actor?
So it changes for every project. I'm of the school of thought. I love the book True or False by David Mamet. That really has helped me as an actor, but I think each role for me is different, and anything I do to prepare is different. But for the most part, I try to be the most present I can, and I try to not be too over prepared. There's a fine line, I believe, for me. I don't know for other actors, but there's a fine line between being over prepared and not prepared enough. So you kind of have to find this happy medium, because when you get there on the day, it can absolutely change.
Does that look like maybe knowing your lines but not having decided all of your emotions behind them?
Yeah, that, and not having mapped out the scene in your head, which I've done that because my personality, I think acting is such an interesting profession for me because my personality is so, I'm type A in a way. I'm very creative, but I'm also very type A. So I love control and structure. And with that, with being an actor, you don't really have any of that. And so it's actually a perfect career for me because it's a total practice in letting go and being in a moment. And yeah, and I think this year we'll fully see that for me, the more projects I take on, because in the past, it's not been that way. I've very tried to control or tried to map out or when I'm there, try to force something. But I think it's so much more beautiful. And I know the acting I love to watch is when it's kind of unexpected and when it's kind of just someone living in a moment and reacting to what's around them. And yeah, so it's interesting because my whole thought process on acting has changed so much since I've gotten older.
How do you get yourself there to be free when your instinct is to be, perfectionist and controlling? How do you get there?
That's a good question. I think it's a practice, honestly, and it's kind of a daily practice for me, especially if I'm like gearing up to go do something or to go film something, which I head to Arkansas to work on something I'm really excited about next week. And I've just been while I've been going through the script, I will make notes that I'm kind of mapping out this scene in my head. But at the end of the day, it's not my story to tell. So I have to trust the director's going to be there to guide me the right way. And I'm going to have to trust myself to be in the moment when I'm there. Because I don't know what that moment's going to feel like for me on any given day. I could feel different, totally different from the character. My other actor could feel different. So I don't know what they're going to be doing. So I just think it's a daily practice and kind of being open to a moment from one moment to the next. And that's not easy to do.
No. Were you trained in any particular method?
When I went to school, we studied Stanislavski and we studied the Alexander method, and I know a little bit about Meisner. But one of my teachers that I loved in school said, "I think what we all should do is just take from different methods and kind of make our own." Because it's like a diet, right? Not every diet works for every person. So not every acting method is going to work for everybody. And I personally don't believe in doing one method your whole acting life, because what you go through as a human is going to carry over into your art. And so if this method doesn't align with that, you know what I mean? It's kind of like you evolve as an artist, you evolve as an actor. And I believe the best way of learning how to be an actor is going through real human experiences, because I can only filter things through what I've really experienced as a human. So,
right.
Yeah.
And how you access things when you're 18 is very different from how you access things when you're 40.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The way you think about things, the way your thought process on things. Yeah, it's like acting is way different for me than it was when I was in college. Like it's completely different. It's a completely different thing. And I've been thinking about this a lot, how acting is just, it's so interesting and it truly is an art form along with filmmaking. While filmmaking is a collaborative art form, so it takes a bunch of artists to do this one piece of art, which that's kind of beautiful in a way. Acting is its own art form. It's one of the most interesting because it's just requires a person being open and honest and free, and it requires that moment to be captured on a camera. And it's just really, the more you think about it, it's kind of trippy because it's, I don't know, it's an interesting endeavor.
Well, it is such a deep and human and raw, vulnerable thing to do.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's what I love about it because, like I said earlier, me as Ashley, just being me, which I'm always me. It's, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, characters, do I really believe in them? It's just me filtering through different facets of myself because I can't ever really be anybody else but me. That's what I love about it, though, is the vulnerability and connect, and knowing that someone watching me is going to connect with what I'm feeling, and they won't feel so alone in feeling what they're feeling because they're going to see it being portrayed on a screen or whatever they're watching it on. So yeah, that's what I do love about it, is the vulnerability.
And that's what makes it so universal, I think, is the more specific you can be about that.
Yeah, because it's the human experience, in an art form. So you're just showing different facets of human life in this artful way. Yeah.
Now, what do you want to do as your career moves forward? What are your goals?
To do more of my own, work for sure.
Do you have something you're working on?
I do have something I'm working on. I have another short, but I also have a feature length script that I wrote that I would love to get off the ground this year. That's one of my kind of 2020 goals. And yeah, just to be more free. I know I hear a lot of like people or artists say this, but to be more free in my work, to really just to be me more and to find out what that me is, because that me is constantly changing. So I think embracing who I am will help other women embrace who they are, and also seeing that on screen and seeing that on social media and seeing that portrayed in the media will help people do that more.
What do you make of what has happened with women over the last few years in this business?
I honestly it didn't register with me until the last couple of years, the injustice of it all. And then I really started seeing it. I started seeing it on the sets I was on. I started seeing it in the way I was treated. I started seeing it in the males I was talking to about film. And I just think it's an interesting time now for women because we are owning our own voices more. And we are realizing, hey, we have stories to tell and our stories are just as good, and we're just as talented. And at the same time, I don't want a job just because I'm female. I want a job because I'm just as talented as my male counterparts. So that's another issue too that I've seen, but I think it's great. And it inspires me. It inspires me to see more women picking up cameras or to telling their own stories or coming into their own skin or finding their own voice. I just think it's a really interesting time, and I'm happy to be telling stories in this kind of time of shift that's happening within not only the film industry but everything.
Everything. Isn't it kind of a bummer when you first start to see it?
It is because it's like, well, was I just kind of, I mean, yeah, I was just raised to think like, oh, this is just kind of the way it is, or
Yeah, I think accepted it. It's the way it is.
yeah, it's, oh, this is a male dominated thing, or like, oh, yeah, I shouldn't speak up about this, or oh, just because I have an opinion, I'm a bitch, or like,
Pretty low bar for being a bitch.
yeah. So yeah, it is kind of a bummer. But I think when you see it, then you can truly start to work it out, to make steps to educate men and women about like, hey, yeah, that actually this is an injustice that's happening, and let's open up a conversation about it. Because honestly, men may not understand because they're also conditioned in this way to think of us a certain way and we think of them a certain way, So it's just kind of taking the cloth off everyone's eyes, and just kind of saying, yeah, hey, I do feel this way and this is happening and let's change that.
What advice would you have for people coming up behind you?
I would say to just start somewhere and just start where you are. Because oftentimes I think people are like, well, I'll wait until this or I'll wait until that. And I say, just start. Like, if you have an idea, just start writing it. Or also pick up The Artist's Way. That's a great guidebook in the birthing of stories. But just start, just do it. Don't wait for a sign. Don't wait for anything spectacular. Don't wait for when you have money, because you never know. Like, you never know, especially in this day and age in social media. We're also much more connected now, and your work can be seen by you don't know who. So you just have to kind of put yourself out there and be brave enough and just jump in head first and think about it later. Think
about it later.
Yeah.
What is your next project you're working on?
So my next project, I am working with a female filmmaker out of Arkansas, which I'm very excited about. And she is at NYU right now in her second year. So this is her big film that they make for her master's. So I am going to help her tell the story and to act in it. So I'm very excited. It's called My Dear God. And she has a website and everything set up for it. So, but I'm happy because it's a female filmmaker and I believe she's kind of an up and comer, and I'm excited to work with her and collaborate with her on this.
That's great. Where can we find you?
I'm all over. I have an Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I also have a website, which I have some changes coming to my website this year because I'm making it more me. Because in the past, I feel like I kind of catered to what everyone else told me I should do and be like to be an actor. But now I just want to be me, and I want everything to feel fully me. So my website, Instagram, Twitter, Instagram, I'm just Ashley Shelton, and then my website's Ashley Shelton, and on Facebook I'm Ashley Shelton, and then on Twitter I'm Ash Edwardly. That's my name on there.
Okay. And I'll link to all your stuff on my website as well.
Yeah, and people can still watch Magnolia and Clementine on Amazon. It's still up there, and you can rate it and leave a review if you're so kind enough to do that so other people can find it. And it's only 16 minutes, so you can still watch it.
That's right. We all have 16 minutes, people.
Yeah, 16 minutes.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It was so nice to talk to you, Ashley.
Yeah, you too.
You've been listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. I'd like to thank Ashley Shelton for sharing her story. And special thanks to Jay Rowe, Danny Rosner, and Allison McQuaid for the music. Please find us on your favorite podcast provider and leave a review. And of course, on our website, theother50%.com, all spelled out in letters, for added features, bios of our guests, and the merch. And you can follow us on all the social media platforms. Thanks for listening. See you next time.